The relationship between Russia and Ukraine is complex and intertwined. The two nations share a long history, dating back centuries. However, this history is marked by both cooperation and conflict. Today we see this conflict play out on the world stage. Russia and Ukraine are engaged in a war that has shaken global stability. Understanding this conflict requires looking back at the historical events that shaped their relationship.
During the Soviet era, Ukraine was part of the USSR. This period, spanning from 1922 to 1991, was marked by significant changes and challenges for the Ukrainian people. This period saw both positive and negative impacts on Ukraine. The Soviet regime invested heavily in industrialization, transforming Ukraine into a major industrial hub within the USSR. On one hand, Ukraine experienced industrialization and economic development. Factories sprang up, cities expanded, and the workforce grew, contributing to the overall economic strength of the Soviet Union. On the other hand, it suffered from political repression and cultural suppression. The Soviet government imposed strict control over political activities, stifling any form of dissent and curbing the expression of Ukrainian national identity. A tragic example of this suppression was the Holodomor, a man-made famine in the 1930s orchestrated by the Soviet regime, which killed millions of Ukrainians. This catastrophic event was a direct result of Stalin's policies, including forced collectivization and grain requisition quotas that left the Ukrainian population starving. This event left a deep scar on the Ukrainian psyche and sowed seeds of resentment towards Moscow. The memory of the Holodomor became a symbol of Soviet oppression and a rallying point for Ukrainian nationalism. Despite these hardships, Ukrainian identity persisted. Cultural traditions were maintained in secret, and the spirit of the Ukrainian people remained unbroken. Folk songs, dances, and customs were passed down through generations, keeping the flame of national identity alive. The desire for self-determination grew stronger, laying the groundwork for future conflicts. Dissidents and nationalists began to organize, demanding greater autonomy and eventually full independence from Soviet rule. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 presented Ukraine with a historic opportunity to break free from Moscow's grip. The Declaration of Independence was a momentous occasion, celebrated with joy and hope for a brighter future. This newfound freedom, however, came with its own set of challenges as Ukraine navigated its path as a sovereign nation.
In 1991, Ukraine declared its independence from the collapsing Soviet Union. This momentous event marked the beginning of a new chapter for Ukraine. However, the transition to independence was not without its challenges. Ukraine inherited a complex legacy from the Soviet era, including economic difficulties and political instability. Moreover, Russia, still a powerful neighbor, was not entirely reconciled to Ukraine's newfound independence. Despite these hurdles, Ukraine embarked on a path toward democracy and integration with the West. This aspiration, however, would soon clash with Russia's own geopolitical ambitions, leading to further tensions.
In 2004, Ukraine experienced a pivotal moment in its post-Soviet history, the Orange Revolution. This was not just a series of protests, but a nationwide movement that captured the world's attention. The streets of Kiev were flooded with a sea of orange, symbolizing hope and a demand for change. This mass protest movement erupted after a disputed presidential election widely seen as rigged in favor of a pro-Russian candidate. The people of Ukraine were not willing to accept a compromised democracy. They took to the streets carrying signs and chanting slogans against election fraud, demanding their voices be heard and their votes be counted fairly. The Orange Revolution demonstrated the strength of Ukraine's civil society and its commitment to democratic values. It was a testament to the power of peaceful protest and the unyielding spirit of the Ukrainian people. They stood together, united in their quest for a transparent and fair political system, showing the world that democracy was worth fighting for. While the protests ultimately led to a peaceful resolution and a rerun of the election, they also exposed the deep political divisions within Ukraine and Russia's willingness to interfere in its internal affairs. The celebration of the election rerun was bittersweet, as it highlighted the ongoing struggle between pro-European and pro-Russian factions within the country. This event marked a turning point in Russia-Ukraine relations, solidifying their adversarial dynamic. The Orange Revolution was a clear signal to Russia that Ukraine was determined to chart its own course, independent of Russian influence. It set the stage for future conflicts and underscored the importance of Ukraine's sovereignty in the face of external pressures. The legacy of the Orange Revolution continues to shape the geopolitical landscape of Eastern Europe to this day.
Section 5. Euromaidan and Crimea escalating tensions. Fast forward to 2014, Ukraine faced another wave of protests known as Euromaidan. These demonstrations were sparked by then-President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to abandon an agreement that would have strengthened ties with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia. The protests, met with brutal crackdowns by government forces, ultimately led to Yanukovych's ouster. Russia, viewing these events as a direct threat to its interests, responded aggressively. Exploiting the chaos and instability, Russia invaded and annexed the Crimean Peninsula, a Ukrainian territory with a majority Russian-speaking population.
Section 6. War in Donbas, a precursor to invasion. Following the annexation of Crimea, Russia further fueled separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, specifically in the Donbas region. This area, with a significant Russian-speaking population, became a battleground between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed separatists. The war in Donbas, lasting from 2014 to 2022, claimed the lives of over 14,000 people and displaced millions more. It served as a grim prelude to the full-scale invasion that would grip the world's attention in 2022.
Section 7. Full-scale invasion 2022 and beyond. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, marking a significant escalation of the ongoing conflict. Russian forces advanced on multiple fronts, targeting major Ukrainian cities, including the capital, Kyiv. The invasion, widely condemned by the international community as a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, has resulted in a devastating humanitarian crisis and reshaped the geopolitical landscape.
Section 8. Global response, condemnation, and support. The international community responded to Russia's invasion with swift condemnation. Many countries imposed harsh economic sanctions on Russia, targeting its financial institutions, energy sector, and key individuals. The United States, the European Union, and their allies provided billions of dollars in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. This global response, while significant, has not deterred Russia from continuing its military campaign in Ukraine. The conflict has exposed the complexities of international relations and the challenges of responding effectively to acts of aggression.
Section 9. Humanitarian crisis, a growing tragedy. The ongoing war in Ukraine has triggered a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced from their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries like Poland, Romania, and Moldova. The conflict has resulted in widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, and residential buildings.
Section 10. The path forward, between hope and uncertainty. As the war in Ukraine grinds on, the path forward remains uncertain. The conflict has left cities in ruins and communities shattered. The resilience of the Ukrainian people is tested daily as they navigate the harsh realities of war. The human cost of this conflict continues to mount with each passing day. Families are torn apart and countless lives are disrupted. Refugees flee their homes in search of safety, often facing perilous journeys and uncertain futures. While diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution are ongoing, achieving a lasting and just peace will be a complex and arduous process. Negotiations are fraught with challenges, and the stakes are incredibly high. The world watches closely, hoping for a breakthrough that could end the suffering. The international community must remain resolute in its support for Ukraine, providing not only humanitarian aid, but also political and economic backing. Global protests and solidarity movements highlight the widespread desire for peace and justice, while also working to address the root causes of the conflict and prevent future acts of aggression. This involves understanding the historical, political, and social factors that have led to the current situation and addressing them comprehensively. The future of Ukraine, and indeed the security of Europe, hangs in the balance. The outcome of this conflict, will have far-reaching implications, not just for Ukraine, but for the entire region. It is a pivotal moment in history, one that will shape the geopolitical landscape for years to come.